Hello, brothers and sisters, long time, my friends. I know it's surprising, but today we'll be doing another Bible study. Last we left off out of Genesis chapter 19. Today we'll be doing Genesis chapter 20. Now let's begin. And it reads, And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country, and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, She is my sister. And Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah. And God came to Abimelech in a dream by night, and said to him, Behold, thou art but a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken for it, she is a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? And he said not unto me, She is my sister. And she herself said, He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. And God said unto him in a dream, Yea, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. And if thou restore her not, know that thou surely shalt die, thou and all that are thine. Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning, and called all his servants, and told all these things in their ear. And the men were sore afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham, and said unto him, What hast thou done unto us? And what have I offended thee, that thou hast brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said to Abraham, What sawest thou, that thou hast done this thing? And Abraham said, Because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. And yet indeed she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. And it came to pass, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, This is thy kindness which thou shalt show unto me at every place where we shall come. Say of me, He is my brother. And Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants, and gave them unto Abraham, and restored him Sarah his wife. And Abimelech said, Behold, my land is before thee, dwell where it pleaseth thee. And unto Sarah he said, Behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes, and to all that are with thee, and with all others. Thus she was reproved. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bore children, that the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Now, let's go over this. So Abraham was journeying. He went toward the south country between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. And he told King Abimelech that Sarah was his sister, which, like, he only told a half the truth. And he says later why he did it. He said he said, Surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. So he was trying to save himself, not knowing the truth of how the people really were, not knowing the whole truth of them himself. So he told a half truth, trying to save himself. And Jesus said that a man that seeks to save his own life will lose it, and that man who will lose his own life for Jesus' namesake will gain it. And then Jesus also talked about in the end times where families would like brother against brother, kingdom against kingdom, nation against nation, in Matthew 24. But he also said that that a man's adversary would be in his own home. Father versus son, mother versus daughter, mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law, father-in-law versus son-in-law, for the simple fact of Christ's namesake. So But that I say that to say that they do it for fear of their own lives. They betray one another. So Judas was that kind of what happened with Judas. Judas was fearing for his own life because he was afraid of hell, afraid of going to hell because he was going against the Jewish sect or against the priests and stuff. For the way that things had always been, because he was concerned about going to hell because they were going against what they knew. So Judas betrayed him that way, and because of that. So continuing on, God visited Abimelech in a dream. He says, because behold, thou art a dead man for this woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. So God is revealing the truth unto Abimelech in a dream. Said, you're a dead man. He's telling the truth. Like, you're gonna die because this man Sarah is a man's wife. And he tells him straight up, do not come near her. But Abimelech said, but the truth was that Abimelech didn't come near her, and he interceded for his nation. But and he was telling God that he was told him the story. Said how Abraham had told him a half truth. How he revealed that she was his wife. He said he was just innocent of it. So he withheld it. So and God said, yeah, I know that thou did this in the integrity of thy heart, because God knew the truth anyway. He knew the integrity of thy heart, so he could see in the men's hearts. So for also I withheld thee from sinning against me, therefore I suffered thee not to touch her. So God protected Abimelech from sinning against God, but also David says later that do my touch my anointed and do my prophets no harm. God's prophets were protected supernaturally. So if anybody would harm a prophet later on, there would be consequences. So he was protecting Abimelech and the nation, Abimelech, the land of Gerar. He was protecting it because two become flesh. So Sarah was part of Abraham's flesh because she was his wife. So also they were going to break God's marriage covenant if he would have defiled Sarah had he done anything. So he protected the land of Gerar, the city of Gerar. He protected Abimelech and all those that were his by warning him, don't do this. So God knew the truth. He didn't allow him to touch him, so he deterred him from doing it. He had influence over Abimelech not to touch her. And then now he tells him to restore Sarah back to Abraham. So he said, restore this man his wife, for he is a prophet. So he says it plainly. He's an ambassador, a spokesman for God. He's a friend of God, as everyone knows. And she says, he shall pray for you. So he's an intercessor. He will pray on your behalf. He will ask of the Lord for forgiveness for Abimelech for this wrong. Even though he didn't commit no wrong, he just took her when he didn't know the truth. So he would make things right if Abraham prayed for Abimelech. But he said if you don't, he gives him choice. He said if you restore her, then the prophet will pray for you, and you shall live. And then if you restore her not, then thou shalt surely die, and thou and all that are died. So he said you'll be restored if you return her, but you'll die if you don't give her back. Therefore Abimelech rose in the morning and called his servants and told them all things in their ear. So he told everybody what happened. Abimelech called Abraham and said, why have you done this? Why have you offended? What have I offended thee? And brought on me and my land a great sin. So he's asking him Abraham, why did you do this to us? And then, why did you do it? And Abraham said, because I thought surely the fear of the Lord of God is not in this place. So they will slay me for my wife's sake. So often that would happen. If they didn't fear God, then they would slay the man and take his wife. That was often happened during warfare, because women and children and were part of the spoils of war back in biblical times. So continuing on, so he had fear somebody's gonna take his life, so he withheld the truth, saying that she wasn't his wife. So to save his own life, like I said earlier. And continuing, yes, and then it reveals that yes, she is indeed my sister. But then he says, but she became my wife. He said, God caused me to wander from my father's house, and then I said unto her, this is my kindness, which shall show unto me every place where we shall come. Say of me, he is my brother. So they're hiding the truth for fear that so they survive, for self-preservation. And then, which often people do, out of fear. And then, so Abimelech took sheep and oxen, men servants and women servants, and gave them to Abraham, and we restored him his wife Sarah. So he gave gifts partially because in order to make up for it, because of an accident, but even though it was Abraham's fault of telling a half truth, and risked Abimelech's life and the life of the nation, that he put them at risk for telling this lie, and then made them think that Sarah was available and everything. So he's making up for it. He's giving gifts. He took sheep and oxen, and they did have servants or slaves back then. So he gave men servants and women servants, and gave them unto Abraham. And he restored him. He gave Sarah back to him. So he gave him a gift of saying, I'm sorry, make up for it. So he was giving gifts. It wasn't really a bribe. It was just a present saying, I'm sorry. Abimelech said, behold, my land is there before thee, dwell where it please thee. And he said unto Sarah, behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. So 1,000 pieces of silver was in there. So behold, he is covering over his eyes, and they are with thee. So he gave him 1,000 pieces of silver too. So he gave him a place to live, a place to dwell in his land. And he gave him 1,000 pieces of silver, and he said that no one should touch Sarah. So he shall be a cover. So everybody will know, the king will make known that Sarah belongs to Abraham. And then after all this, Abraham prayed to God, and he healed Abimelech. So, and his wife and his maidservants, and they had children. So he healed, because Abraham prayed, Abimelech, his wife, and his maid servants were restored, no longer barren, but they were able to produce children. Because the Lord had closed up all the wounds of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. So because Abraham had given that half truth and didn't give him the full truth, the land suffered, because Abimelech had taken a woman who thought it was available, thought was like, I don't know, just a sister, not married. So if she was married, then it would have been a problem. But he didn't make that known. So you gotta make sure you give everybody the full picture, give them the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so that everybody knows the full picture, all the facts, so that we can accurately move forward. Had they known, then it would have never happened that way. The wounds wouldn't have been closed up for Sarah's sake. But because Abraham prayed, Abimelech made it right, gave Sarah back. They made a mistake. Abraham made a mistake. But then Abimelech about made a mistake, but God intervened. And then Abimelech made it right, and therefore then Abraham made it right and prayed unto God. And then God made it right. He restored, after Abimelech restored his Abraham's wife to him, then God restored his wives and handmaidens, and he restored them. He healed them, and they were able to bear children. Now, because of Sarah, because he had taken Sarah illegally, then he had stopped up the wombs of the house of Abimelech. So it's important to get the full story, to get all the facts, to tell the truth, the whole truth. That way, we can accurately go forward and not have any mistakes. Like, have the whole story. It's important to have that. That way we can accurately decipher the story and what's going on, and how, and like a character would have to know what's fully going on, so that way they can correctly move forward. So since there was not the whole story given, then there was error. There were mistakes committed, and people's lives were really at risk. All right, there were consequences that were going to happen. There were consequences because of the half-truth. So there can be consequences if you don't tell the whole truth. I think that's one thing you can learn from here. The consequences of, the consequences were greater for the city of Gerar, or nation, land of Gerar, more than it was for Abraham. Abraham was self-preserving, and was self-preserving. He was saving his own life, but then it was a mistake. It caused a problem. You don't hold the truth, you lie. It can cause a problem. It will be found out. God will make it known. So if you lie, it's going to be found out. It's going to be exposed. God's going to bring it to light. What's done in darkness is going to be brought to light. So think about that. If you try to hide something, if you try to hide the truth, then it's going to be brought to light. That same is going to be happening in this world right now, especially in the United States of America. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to state it, the facts. If you hide the truth, it's still going to be found out. So don't hide the truth. Give the true story about what happened and what's going on. And, it won't affect the events. So it won't be a domino effect. You keep chaos from ensuing, like it happened with Abimelech. Like people's lives were in danger. Literally were in danger and they were almost destroyed by the Lord because Abraham made a mistake, was trying to self-preserve, trying to save his own life. So think about that. You try to save yourself, tell a lie in order to stay alive. Is it really worth it? Are there greater risks if you do such a thing? Something to think about. And if you try to another thing is if you try to self-preserve and try to hide people from the truth, which is Jesus Christ. You self-preserve and don't preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, then think about that. There's a greater risk. If you don't share the gospel with somebody, there's a greater risk. There's a greater risk that one person can see judgment, and if they don't know about Jesus, guess what? If they die, they can go to hell. not knowing Jesus Christ, they can go to hell. They're destroyed for their lack of knowledge. They're destroyed out of ignorance because they don't know Jesus. They're destroyed. And guess what? It was your assignment to tell them about Jesus. I'm preaching to you just as I'm preaching to myself. Think about that. Don't self-preserve it. Don't think about yourself. Living for Jesus is living a life of being a living sacrifice for Jesus Christ. I think that's how Peter put it. Being a living sacrifice. So, self-sacrifice. Do not try to self-preserve, because it's no longer you that lives, but Christ that lives within us. We are not our own. We are Christ. So, you preserve Christ by spreading the gospel of Christ. You spread Christ. You spread life, not death. There are no negative repercussions in God's eyes. Sure, maybe the person might react out of the flesh, but you'll live most of the time. So, think about it. A man who seeks to save his own life will lose it. He who loses his life for Christ's sake shall live. So think about that. Try not to self-preserve. Try not to only think about yourself and saving yourself and doing what's best for you. Think about the souls, the lives that are affected if they don't learn about Jesus Christ. If they don't know the truth. If you make a mistake and mess up, God can fix it, but He wants you to do the right thing. Tell them the truth of Jesus Christ, because He is the truth, the way, and the life, and He is the only way to the Father. No one can go to the Father except for Jesus. So show them the door, how to get to heaven, because He is the only way. In Jesus' name.